Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. From a professional snowboarder to a CEO that eliminated his role by distributing his responsibilities into a leadership collective, get ready for a fascinating interview from Zurich with Oliver Brunschwiler and meet retailer Freitag. Freitag is a super innovative and agile retailer that takes truck tarps and fashions them into unique handbags and accessories. Oliver takes us through his origin story, which is also the origin story of Freitag. How they approach product development, the customer-created design is a masterclass in modern retail. The organizational structure, holocracy, is a lesson in running a next-generation global retailer. Oliver then takes us through his perspective on global expansion, retail in the somewhat post-COVID European war inflationary period we're in, and how the DNA of agility, built into their management model, will create outsized success for this innovative company.
And our organizational forum really helps because decision making, as you asked before, is distributed all over the organization.
Let's listen in now. Oliver, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thank you for having me.
Well, fantastic. It's great to have you. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. Now, where in the world am I finding you today?
Well, I'm a homegrown Swiss. I sit in Zurich, well, close to Zurich. I'm looking at Lake Zurich currently. Weather is really nice. No more masks around here.
Yeah.
Really warm. A little too warm for the time of the year, but beautiful.
Fantastic. Well, listen, let's jump right in. Let's talk about you. So tell me a bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for a living.
Fantastic question. I was made in Phoenix, Arizona when I was 0 years old. And then my Swiss family actually moved back to Switzerland. So I grew up in Switzerland, the middle of Europe. Started my education in the arts and graduated in economics while traveling the world as a professional snowboarder for some years. I then founded my own winter sports apparel brand, which we, a couple of years later, sold to investors. Then worked for creative agencies for different brands in the sports, consumer goods, and luxury sectors before founding one of the first digital brand and strategy agencies in 1999. And then after selling the company to actually an American agency network, I had the pleasure to join recycling pioneer Freitag as actually one of my first employments. So I was always an entrepreneur before that. And those two guys that founded this influential brand were always some kind of my heroes. So I said, if I want to join a company, I would probably join Freitag. So since 2014, I was fortunate to help to transform and grow the company in various roles. In around 2018, I was appointed lead link and strategist, which in the world of hierarchical organizational charts translates into the responsibilities of a chief executive officer in traditional organization forms. And then by the end of 2021, I decided to distribute most of my operational roles into a leadership collective, fostering inclusive organizational progress, and to focus on strategic projects for myself, for my peers, and enabling the brand's future potential outside of the bags and accessories business.
Well, so interesting. There's a bunch of threads I can pull on, so to speak, on that conversation. So let's go back to this whole professional snowboarder bit that you had. That's not, I don't hear that very often. But, you know, I do often find or see professional athletes creating their own lines of apparel. Was that the genesis, so to speak, of trying to create something that you couldn't find in the market? I mean, what was it? You know, other than the driver of this could be interesting, was there something missing that you thought you wanted to fill, a gap that you saw that you wanted to take advantage of?
Oh, definitely. At that time, it was the first boom years of the upcoming sport. It was a hyper trend. As a Canadian, you might know that it was all about skiing in the 80s, but the curve was somehow also decreasing. So snowboarding came right at the right time. but it came from surfing, skateboarding, influenced by people that were like more like hippies and punks and rock stars. And so for us in Europe, or actually as a global movement, I took advantage of these combination of cultural elements, and we saw a gap there to start a brand out of Europe as one of the first brands that was dedicated to snowboarding, soft goods brand. And we just took an opportunity to be in that market at the very first wave. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah, definitely.
Kidding. Now let me also talk about this, your idea that you mentioned, not your idea, your practice of this collective leadership. So unpack that for me a little bit. I mean, we've got a lot of things to cover in our discussion today, but I just wanted to touch on that for a little bit. So talk about the way that decisions are made, and you can't always all agree on something. So how is there finally a single decision made? Just speak a few minutes on how that works.
Of course. It's called holocracy. It's a self-organization form, very agile. Because in 2016, we were looking for something agile, not constantly or every 2 years you have to reorganize the company, but instead of doing that all the time. So you're working on the company governance all the time. And everybody involved in the organization can actually do that. It was actually designed by an American. It's a hierarchy of specialists. So the company is organized in Hollands in circles, independent circles. Employees in various roles make decisions based on their responsibilities. But sometimes people mix that up a lot with some kind of a hippie sit-in, which is not. So it's very clear who in which role makes decisions. Because there are no traditional managers doesn't mean holocracy does away with hierarchies. It's the opposite. Holocracy is deeply hierarchical, but one that consistently revolves around expert roles and current needs. This way, hierarchy is distributed across the entire organization, and every member can participate in changing the organization via facilitated processes. So for us, it's something that works quite well, considering our DNA of our founders, because our founders were classic managers, hierarchical thinking. So this is a self-organization form. And after a couple of years, after 2 years in the pandemic, I saw that trust is the most important element in all organizations, in all teams probably. So we went one step further and said that we actually don't have this primus inter pares anymore. So there's no more like the boss person in the company. It's a collective of 5 and plus 8 in another role that are like leading the company.
Interesting. Now, in your specific role, let me give you an example, and then we'll get into all about the business and sustainability and the product and how you approach it. If you wanted to decide, I think you've got one location in North America, but let's say you decided we wanted to have more, or we wanted to go to a country we're not in. Is that part of your role in kind of strategy, or is there a collective of people who decide on expansion kind of issues?
I love that question because expansion is absolutely on the mind of every entrepreneur. And I think what we foster in this organization is entrepreneurial thinking. So in general, there's always has to be a visionary person. But the thing is that you don't need like the old leaders or classic bosses to be visionary thinkers and move organization forward or expand, in that case, the markets. So I had one of these roles that was called the forerunner. So in a role as a forerunner and not as the lead link of the company, I was accountable to write expansion plans and make them bomb-proof, and then take the next step of projects and finding out if these markets will work. For example, the US was on our map before the pandemic. But first, we said we will enter the UK because it's not a big market for us. It's a reactive market, like same as the US. So we said we take the UK first and then we go to the US. And that was our plan before the pandemic because we actually wanted to close the cycle around the world. We're very strong in Asia, When you travel to Japan, to China, to Thailand, to Taiwan, you see Freitag all over. It's like a very present brand. And in the States, you don't do that, or in Canada, not even in Canada. Yeah. But if I tell the story to the US, to the Americans, everybody wants it. So we said, of course, there's so much potential, but it will cost a lot. So, and then you have this role, being accountable, spendings over a certain sum. They are responsible to make the final decision on project level, for example. So it's a bit complicated, but entrepreneurial behavior, expanding a brand, growing a brand, is all over the place in our culture.
Oh, fantastic. It's a great bit. And it's funny, a lot of retailers I talk to, international retailers, many come to Canada first and then go to the US because we're very close, similar markets. Not exactly the same, but
we should talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very I think in the past, pre-COVID, of course these things slowed down during COVID, but pre-COVID I think there's 50 or 60 international brands that established a beachhead here just to get a vibe, for the North American market because there's enough similarities. Anyway, enough about that. Tell me all about you as a retailer and as a manufacturer of these innovative products.
Freitag. It's a German name and it stands for Friday. So in German or in English, it's Friday, but it's Freitag.
All right. Tell me all about Freitag. Where you operate, scope, scale, what makes you different, a bit of the origin story.
Freitag is a recycling pioneer. So we sell unique bags and accessories made out of used truck tarp and other recyclable materials or circular materials. And each product we make is unique because it's cut out of used truck tarp, which we source from transport companies all over Europe. But actually the truth is it's that we sell purpose. So sustainability is everybody's lips. On everybody's lips we have an advantage because Freitag was and remains a first mover which started recycling, upcycling abandoned materials into unique, timelessly designed, functional, urban lifestyle products in 1993. So that's quite a long time ago. It's 30 years next year. So we have this advantage of being one of those first movers, at least in the markets they know us, not in Canada yet, but in a lot of other markets. So before many other major brands went viral with greenwashing, we promised to extend product life cycles by repairing products way ahead before conscious lifestyles became the talk of the town. So it's in the core of its business model, it's selling unique bags made out of used truck tarps. And that has a beauty and a beast in the business models, but I can tell you about distribution maybe later on about this.
It's often the case, as you say, you're a real originator from that perspective. It is often the case that I find brands struggle between this, that material, sustainability around the material and fun and innovative and great looking. I was on your site, wonderful looking products. I mean, they're well designed. There's a sense of fun and humor to it and style. How do you pull those two things together? Because they're not often always found in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, right. I mean, currently, we love to see how awareness concerning planetary health grows in societies across generations. So conscious consumerism makes its way close to the exec floors, finally. But, I mean, it's still just a drop in the ocean, considering the challenges and opportunities the next generation will be confronted with. So Freitag has a purpose-driven brand. Our purpose reads intelligent design for a circular future, which is a pretty serious purpose, company purpose, what you're aiming for, right? So intelligent design, everything can be intelligently designed. Organizations, production processes, not just products. But in our case, values come before strategy. So it's a brand driven from within the company through a so-called self-organization, as I explained before. And considering our serious, meaningful values, which are reflected in our manifest, for example, we only own objects that last, we promote the very unique and playful tone of voice how we do things at our customers' touch points. So we see a lot of things we do as work in progress, or as the Japanese say, wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection. So the beauty of imperfection somehow releases a certain kind of trust to a brand because you see they're not perfect. And this is also reflected in our base material, which is a used material. So it always looks slightly fucked up, which is never perfect. And tell me who's perfect, which human being is perfect. So you kind of see yourself in our brand, and you're closer than being just a perfect device, for example, So, and that makes us very accessible. And that's how I think the serious purpose or a serious goal to solve or help to solve planetary issues, combining that with our tone of voice of how we do things, makes us as an accessible brand.
Yeah, I want to talk about your experience and your reflections on the COVID era. I mean, I don't want to dwell on it. It's more hopefully in the rearview mirror than in front of us. But there's no question it was 2 years of tremendous consumer change. I mean, it's been described as an accelerant. Now, you're a purpose-driven brand. Have you found or have you altered? I don't think you've changed the strategy by the sounds of it. Did you change the purpose? But have you found consumers different? Did it move consumerism forward, backward, or sideways? I mean, initially, many thought that people would be more conscious about one thing or the other, but there's the powerful regression to the mean. But have you detected, or as a group, have you reflected on how consumers and the market has perhaps been changed or moved forward by the COVID era?
Absolutely. I mean, this was major change, shock for some people. We might not even know about it because it was narratives had to be rewritten. For us, the pandemic was a real challenge because basically, operational wise, selling unique bags and accessories is not comparable to mass products. While most brands had no issues shifting from omni-channel or retail to digital channel distribution, for us, this was harder. So imagine a product page from Freitag website, and you see many different colors, playful, good mix of colors and designs. And so there's nicer colors and nicer designs. So imagine that if all your customers are going online and everybody wants the nice colors, the only thing is left is the not so nice colors, which is you only have like reds left and blues left, and then the conversion goes down really, really quick.
Yeah.
And so this is the beast of our business model. Shifting to e-com was a huge struggle for us because you have to not just use the organization form, which in our case was an agile organization form, so that helped a lot. But technically, this was of course we had to adapt, and this took a while to get back to the growth path we had before, which was really steep. And it also allowed us internally to really recalibrate on our long-term strategy. I think for a lot of brands, they got shaken up, and that was actually good. So, for example, we created an ambitious circular roadmap, which we now follow. And this would have happened if we went just to UK or maybe Canada first and then the US. So we would have expanded the brand without the COVID. And now we recalibrated strategy that might be more sustainable than just expanding and growing.
I talked to a lot of businesses, and one of the things they took away from the COVID era was agility. It sounds like it's baked into the bones or the DNA of your organization. Let's talk about the playbook for what's happening today. There's always a crisis of some sort, but we seem to have, the merging of many crises all happening at the same time, from what's left of COVID, of course, in China. If you operate in China, you would know there's zero tolerance policies shutting down cities. You've got war in Europe. You've got inflation in North America. What's the playbook for your business now? Is it changed, or how are you adapting to the current situation with your agile format?
Yeah, you said it before. It's woven into the whole organization. Agility was there already. That was our advantage. But the only constant from now on is definitely change.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So as an organization, you need the right recipes, processes to tackle disruptive change or external shocks. And then to become the leader in a constantly changing world, your priorities must be aligned to your purpose, because that's what you have to believe in. So I have to repeat, it's definitely a strong purpose with an agile organization form helps. But for me, as a old world leader, trust was first, because people, they were all over the place. They still are. So we have projects going on in markets far, far away. We never met, and we invest a lot to actually grow again there and create new experiences. But we never met. It's crazy.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. When I talk to folks like yourself, leaders like yourself, there's various schools of thought pre-COVID about whether they wanted people with their bums in the seats in the office. Many senior leaders would admit they wanted that. And now, post-COVID, they realize they didn't need that. But they are struggling a bit. We all are, I think, in how to form those other bonds in a company culture. How to inculcate new employees into what the culture is when you might not see them. They might not be located. How do you master that? Is this the format of your business very amenable to that? Or do you take extra steps to kind of, this is the culture of the organization you just joined, and bring people together? Talk about that for a few minutes.
We cannot direct company culture. There's no way. This has to come from within. And as I said, I can trust other people, and our organization form really helps, because decision making, as you asked before, is distributed all over the organization. So this helps, of course, to create this culture of being in eye level. And for me also, working in different roles and not as the lead link or as the CEO, right. I can actually adapt to that pretty well, because I get asked as an expert in some kind of work. And that creates a very focused way of working on topics and not around people.
Interesting. Let's last couple of questions. Let's talk about the contradiction of consumers a little bit. I was noting there is a big release that the retailer Shine is now the number one downloaded app. Fast fashion hasn't gone away. So there seems to be a contradiction even in my own household. With my daughter, who's very sustainably oriented, yet she buys from some of these companies. And I said, well, how do you square that circle? I mean, clearly, at the mass level, there's significant movement towards sustainability around fashion, but there still is lots of fashion that is less sustainable. How do you think consumers, and how do you think they're thinking about squaring that circle? And do you forecast a great future ahead for the next 20 years?
It's a fact. It's a work in progress. There are the Freitag and, for example, the Patagonia target customers. We call them young, conscious urbanites, or urban outdoors in the millions. And there's the billions of people who might know about some planetary urgencies, but conscious consumerism didn't really hit their nerves yet.
Right.
So consumers tend to combine all aspects of buying, from luxury to greenwashing fast fashion. And our product is rooted in the purpose. So is our roadmap and strategy. If we can inspire more brands by being successful with growth and reach, doing how we do it, or Patagonia does it, others might want to follow. So loyal users, in our case, don't buy the brand, they buy into the brand. And I'm not sure if Shane can promise a brand you can buy into. So this is a trend that will find its way to a more sustainable business model, I'm quite sure. So it's work in progress. I'm not stressed by this. I see this as natural habits rising from all kinds of disruption the pandemic also brought up.
Point in time kind of stuff. All right, last question for you. What's next for the business? And importantly, what's next for you? You've had quite a journey attached to through your entrepreneurial retail and this brand. What's next for the business, and what's next for you?
Well, for the business, we're exploring the truck tarp of the future, a fully circular material. As you might imagine, we're a small player. There's the transport industry in Europe, and they transport millions of tons of PVC around on European transit routes. And we actually want to change that picture or that material, and in order to profit. And this is far away from our business model. But as grown-up entrepreneurs, we have to start to shift from linear materials to circular materials. It's our intrinsic motivation. So we need to transform our linear economy to a circular economy. And this also affects our business. So if we can at least transform a couple of million tons PVC into a circular material, we'll do that. Because at the end, it all comes back as a beautiful, unique bag. So for our business, these are projects that really drive us further according to our purpose. I'm personally more getting involved into circular business model transformation too, and changing organizational structure at board level, because I see a lot of potential there in companies, us as an influencer, helping others how to organize your shift, your transformation into a circular world.
Well, I think you certainly have a lot of lessons to share to the retail industry. So thank you, Oliver, so much for coming on to the Voice of Retail podcast. I'll be keen to check in and see how the transformation continues. But for now, thanks again for joining me on the Voice of Retail, sharing your story, and I wish you much continued success.
Thank you very much. I can't wait to travel to Canada and maybe talk about expansion one day. Thank you for having me.
That'd be fun. Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next podcast, and the Food Professor podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Emmy LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.